Hello, welcome to the Fun Kids Science Weekly. This is the podcast that promises to uncover all the real secrets that are lurking out there in the universe. My name's Dan. Thanks for coming along for the adventure. This week, we'll talk about the largest spider in the world. We've also got one of the best science news stories ever, I promise. Right, listen up. In it, it's got sea creatures, snot houses, and a trip to Mars, and how they help each other. That's in one story. It's on the way a little bit later. And your questions need answering as always. Today they're on plants, throats, and noses. That's coming up next on the Fun Kids Science Weekly. First, let's dive into it with one of our favourite geniuses. This is Professor Hallux.
Professor Hallux's Digital Dental Depository, with support from Philips Sonicare.
To honour great Uncle Halitosis, dentist extraordinaire, on the occasion of his 100th birthday, Professor Hallux is creating a pop-up digital dental depository, an oral health help desk. He's going to see how many questions all about teeth he can answer against the clock.
It's a super sweet set of sizzlers today, Nanobot. All about sugar. Wind it up and let it go.
First question. How does sugar harm our teeth?
It's not the sugar itself that causes damage to teeth. It's the acid that bacteria creates when it consumes the sugar. Sugar is a source of food and energy to bacteria, you see. And as they break it down, acids are produced. This acid breaks through the enamel on your teeth, creating tiny holes which can cause your teeth to be sensitive to both hot and cold temperatures. Over time, those tiny holes can get bigger and bigger until they form large holes, called cavities. And that's tooth decay.
Good start. Oh, it's a true or false. In the UK, sugar has been causing harm to our teeth for thousands of years. True or false?
I'm going to say false. It's false because we only started to import sugar in the Tudor period. That's from the late 1400s. Scientists know from studying the teeth in skeletons that before then people's teeth were actually pretty healthy. The first sugar and sugary delicacies were luxuries, and only for the rich. Queen Elizabeth I was so fond of sugar, it's said her teeth were rotten and black. By the 1700s, sugar was available to everyone, and that's when tooth decay became more common. Funnily enough, that's when dentistry also became more common, with all those yucky, rotten teeth to pull out.
Ew. So, if you can't resist sweet treats, what's the best way to prevent damage?
Well, drinking water is a helpful way to wash the acids away. Your own spit or saliva contains minerals which can help repair damage to your teeth, so it's important to stay hydrated. The acid attacks from bacteria only last around 20 minutes, so it's better to eat sweet things over short periods, not over a long period of guzzling pop or munching on snacks. That way you're reducing the amount of time your teeth are under attack. And using a straw is a great way to stop a sweet drink coating your teeth. And don't forget to use a paper or reusable straw. Much better for the environment than single-use plastic.
Coming up to the finish now. You should always clean your teeth as soon as you've had a sugary snack or drink. Is that true or false?
It's actually false. When the acid is being produced, it can actually cause more harm if you brush your teeth straight away, as you might be helping the acid through the enamel. It's better to use a mouthwash and save your brushing for twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. Using an electric toothbrush and flossing can help ensure you get into all the cracks.
That's correct. And time's up. Brilliant, Professor. Very respectable score there, and lots of data for our digital dental depository.
Professor Hallux's Digital Dental Depository, with support from Philips Sonicare. Find out more at funkidslive.com/Hallux.
Right, let's answer some of your questions then. These are the ones that you have left as a review for the Fun Kids Science Weekly over on Apple Podcasts. This is from Kaylee, who wants to know how tall plants can grow and why they get so big. Now, trees really are the biggest plants around, and they grow tall because they're in a constant fight to get sunlight and water. It's evolution in action, really. Now, think about a busy forest, okay? loads of trees all over the place. Well, you want to get more sunlight than the others, don't you? Being stuck in the shade with no water means you can't photosynthesize. It's useless to you. So the trees that grow the tallest get the most sunlight and they will thrive. And like all evolution, that means other trees that don't get a lot of sunlight die out, which is why you tend to get quite a big concentration of tall trees in the same place. Like in California, that's where the tallest trees in the world are. They're called redwoods. And there's one redwood called Hyperion, which is the tallest. It's the biggest in the world. It's bigger even than Big Ben is here in the UK. It's 115 metres high. Hyperion, the redwood. Thanks for that, Kaylee. The next up, we've got something from Finley. Hello, Finley. Is in Texas. Finley wants to know what makes throats sore and get itchy. Well, mostly, Finley, throats get sore because of a virus. And what happens, and what makes it itchy, is actually your body trying to fight the virus. Your immune system kind of overreacts a little bit. Think of your throat a little bit like a battlefield. And your immune system and your blood cells are fighting off the virus. That's what's happening in your throat. That's what's making it itchy and painful. And lastly, we're going to go from Texas in America, the other side of the world, to Perth, Australia, and say hello to Lachlan, who is 7 years old. Hey, Lachlan, who asks, what is a blocked nose and why does cold air affect your nose sometimes? Again, Lachlan, this really is what happens when you get sick. The blood vessels that make the holes in your nose, the tunnel, they surround the tunnel of your nostrils. Those blood vessels become inflamed. Usually because they're fighting allergies or a virus like a cold. When they're inflamed, they get bigger, which means there's less space for the air to move up your nostrils. It kind of squashes it. Now, sometimes cold air cools the nose down, which can make the blood vessels shrink and get smaller a little bit. But also sometimes cold weather gets into your nose and it kind of tickles the nerves that you've got in there, which makes snot and mucus so your nose gets runny. Thank you so much for that, Lachlan. Hope I answered those well enough for all of you. If you've got a question that you want answered on the show, you need to leave it as a review for the Fun Kids Science Weekly over on Apple Podcasts. Find us on there. There's a little comment box at the bottom. Let me know what you want answered. Leave your name as well so I can say hello. That'd be lovely. Thanks. It's the Fun Kids Science Weekly. Now, scientists have discovered that bees do a lot more than buzz. They've decoded tooting and quacking noises, which the Queen Bee uses for the most important messages. Now, Dr. Martin Benchick is from Nottingham Trent University. He led the study, and he's on to tell us more. Martin, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. How are you today?
Really, really well. Now, just before we actually start about the study, can you tell us very quickly why the Queen Bee is so important? Because it should help us wrap our head around that before we find out the messages that she gives.
Sure. The queen bee is the only individual in the colony who is allowing the colony to expand in numbers. And believe it or not, bees die quite quickly. In the summertime, a bee lives perhaps 3 weeks. And you need to refresh the pool of bees very quickly. And you need to expand the size of the colony. And only the queen is capable of helping that.
And the way they decide a queen bee is quite cool, isn't it? They kind of figure out who it's going to be and then they help her kind of become the queen of the hive, don't they?
When the colony decides to do so, they generate several queens, sometimes 2, 3, 4, up to 15 queen bees. And then they have a process of releasing them. And eventually, after the 15, up to 15 queens are born and have gone, there is only one queen remaining behind, and she will be staying there for the whole year.
Now, before we get on to finally talk about the messages that you were able to see, the different noises, why did you start the study, Martin? What gave you an inkling that maybe there was interesting noises happening in the hive that not many people thought about?
Oh, I've never thought of this. Why did I start this? Let me think. That is because my father is a beekeeper. He has always been interested in experimenting with bees. And I have always been interested in sounds and recording sounds. And we merged efforts. He supplied the bees. He supplied a few explanations. I supplied the recording, and this is how it all started. It's really because of my dad.
So you began recording the bee noises. What did you notice right away, Martin, that was perhaps a little bit unexpected?
Yeah, that's the fact that The bee, because of its size, produces sounds that you can just about hear, but there is a range of vibrations and sounds that you cannot hear. So the first thing I noticed was sounds that are unexpected for myself, unexpected for you, and unexpected even for an experienced beekeeper, because some of the signals we collect cannot be heard simply by listening. They are too faint, they are too weak. You need to amplify them suitably.
So when you've done that, Martin, you're amplifying the bee sounds. Suddenly you've got loads more bee noises than you initially thought. What are you doing with these sounds then? How are you working it? Well, just tell us actually about the different sounds that these bees are making.
So one which is taking place very often, and which you cannot hear unless you have this amplification, is the one we call the whooping signal. It goes whoop, whoop, like this, up to once a minute. It's a very frequent, normal sound. Another one is what we call the bee purr. It sounds like a cat purring. It goes purr, purr, like this. This one actually is also one you will not hear by ear. You have to have amplification to hear it. Then those that made the news are those made by the queen, and those can be heard even from a distance from the colony, because the queen is a bigger animal, stronger, and the signal that she sends is longer. It can be up to 10 seconds. For example, here's an impression of a tooting queen. She would go ooh, 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 and sustain that for up to 10 to 15 seconds. So here are three examples of 7 different bee sounds that we are recording at the moment.
Why are they making these different sounds then? What do each mean, do we think?
So some we know, some we are not sure, and some we don't know at all. So, for example, the whooping signal, the one that goes whoop, whoop, we think is a surprised bee. You must imagine bees in the colony, they are very much crammed. They like to be very close to each other in order to sustain the heat that they need to live. And it's a little bit like you going in a busy train station or a tube station or a busy airport. Imagine so many people surrounding you that you can't walk without colliding shoulders, without colliding into people. It is the same for worker bees. They can't really move inside the colony without accidentally colliding into someone. And we have evidence that upon doing a collision, they go whoop, a little bit like you saying, whoops, sorry, to collide into you. So that's one signal. That's the whooping one. The cat purr, we have absolutely no idea why they're doing it. There is a signal called the DVA, which goes toot, 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 toot for 1 second. This signal we know is a wake-up signal. So some bees are in charge to wake up other bees and get them busy, because unlike what the expression suggests, busy as bees, in fact, the vast majority of bees in a colony are not at all busy. They're very lazy, they do the minimum, they're dormant, they don't move much. And when there is a nice opportunity of good weather and good nectar outside, there is a population of bees responsible to wake them up and ask them to get on with the job, go out, get some honey. And that's the DVA signal that goes toot, 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 like this. And then there's the Queen Bee signal, which is the main signal that came out in the news this Tuesday.
This is the quacking, isn't it, Martin? Will you tell us why the Queen Bee quacks? We've already kind of talked about how a queen bee is made, how they're made royal. Talk about why she quacks, and also mention the royal jelly. I read about the royal jelly and it fascinated me.
So the queen bee is born from an egg which is a normal egg. It's an egg that should have become a worker bee, a normal worker bee. However, that special egg, that egg is not at all special, it's a normal egg, forgive me, but that egg, if bees want to make it a queen, they feed it with a special substance. If you want an egg to become a worker bee, you feed it with pollen. If you want an egg to become a queen bee, You need to feed it with a special substance that's not available in nature. The substance is made by the worker bees. It is called royal jelly. It looks a little bit like thick milk. It's extremely white, snow white like milk. And if you feed a normal egg with royal jelly instead of pollen, you will end up with a queen bee, a bee that is living 5 years instead of a few weeks, a bee that's 3 times as large as a worker bee, and a bee that will lay up to 2,000 eggs per day in her busy life. Now, the tooting and quacking you wanted to hear about. So quacking is one of the signals that queen bees are capable of. Worker bees are not capable of quacking. And tooting is another signal the queen bee is capable of, and worker bees are not capable of tooting. So the tooting, we think, if you had to translate it into English, the tooting would be a queen saying, I am born, I am freely roaming in the colony, please keep the other quacking queens captive. We think the tooting could be translated into this. It's a request to the colony saying, please keep the other quacking queens captive. And in response to that, the other queens are quacking. They go quack, 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 quack. And if I could translate it into English, the quacking would mean, please let me out, please release me.
It's just an amazing story. Dr. Martin Benchik, thank you so much for coming on the Science Weekly and telling us all about it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
We've got a strange one for this week's Dangerous Dan, right? Because it looks terrifying, but it's not really that deadly to humans. But just go with it, I promise, because when you hear what it is, it will become extremely clear why it's on this list. The Goliath Birdeater is the biggest spider in the world. Look it up online right now. It's bright red with like an orange tinge to it. It's an absolute terror. It looks a bit like a hairy ball of fire with legs. Now, you find them in the rainforests of South America. It hides in deep burrows near swamps. Now, some people in South America actually eat parts of it. Not the parts that you would expect. They eat the hairs. They roast them. And apparently the hairs of this tarantula taste a little bit like shrimp. Now, this spider, this tarantula, has fangs which can pierce a human's skin. Thing is, its venom isn't really strong enough to do that much damage. They say it feels like a sharp wasp sting. But when they're threatened, they kind of sweat out a harmful toxic mucus. And they eat rodents and frogs and toads and lizards and snakes, but not really birds. Which is strange. Still, it's massive, it's terrifying, and it's got an awesome name, which gets it on our list. Everybody welcome the Goliath Birdeater. We're heading on another mission to Mars right now in another one of our fantastic podcast series that you can get over at funkidslive.com and wherever you're listening to this show. Thunderbirds Are Go, Mission to Mars, where the actual Thunderbirds from Tracy Island, TV stars, expert scientists, space explorers, Kaio and Brains, they're going to take us on a mission to the Red Planet.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thunderbirds Are Go, Mission to Mars.
I'm a huge fan of international rescue, and so where better to find out about the latest cool technology than from the world-famous Tracy Island? Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem, Dan. The best space research is all about working together and sharing what we know. And that's certainly the case with the tech we're checking out today. Brains, take it away.
As we know, a key task for Rosalind the rover is to search for water. It's one of the most important mission objectives, because where there's evidence of liquid water, we might find evidence of life. Let's look at the Red Planet. Now we know there's ice on Mars. Look here, we can easily see the polar ice caps. Previous Mars missions have also detected water vapor in the air.
Remind me, why are we looking for water if we already know there's ice and water vapor?
Ice and the vapor are different to liquid water. It's evidence of liquid water that we're interested in, because that's what can support life.
And we know from our past missions that looking underground can lead to some surprising discoveries. Do you remember Mission Deep Search, Brains?
Of course. That's when we helped some explorers on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. They were drilling into the ice and found an underground ocean, and also something swimming around. It got pretty dangerous for them, so they asked for help from international rescue.
Scary, but how cool would that be? Underground rivers and oceans on Mars.
The main reason for looking underground is that we know very little can survive on the Martian surface because of radiation from the sun.
So here's some of the clever technology that the rover will be using to search. Say hello to WISDOM. That stands for Water, Ice and Subsurface Deposit Observation on Mars. WISDOM is a ground-penetrating radar to characterize the stratigraphy under the rover.
Which basically means it scans deep into the ground to make a 3D map of what's under the surface and identifies the best places for Rosalind to drill. Places that have a good chance of finding things and are safe for the drill itself. It can only scan a few meters though, so might not be able to find hidden oceans. WISDOM will work in tandem with another piece of technology. Isn't that right, Brains?
That's right, the Neutron Spectrometer called Hadron. It will take a variety of measurements, including ones to search for hydrogen in the form of bound water or water ice.
Which means...
It's a special scanner which can detect the molecules that make up liquid water, or show evidence of them having been there in the past.
Got it. And where this is or was liquid water, we might find evidence of life.
That's right. As Keoma mentioned, much of the ExoMars mission has been created through collaboration between countries and scientists, from across Europe and for further afield. Take the Proton rocket that will launch the rover. It's Russian, whilst Rosalind the rover has been assembled in Stevenage in the UK. The WISDOM team comprises scientists from France, Germany, Italy, Norway, Austria, United Kingdom, and the United States.
And Hadron has been developed by American and Russian scientists. It's the next generation of equipment used on NASA's Curiosity mission.
Wow, wouldn't it be great if we could work together on Earth as well as we work together in space? It helps to share what we know, and I know I've been lucky that you've shared what you know, but I've still got a bunch of questions.
Fire away. Maybe we'll learn something together.
Thunderbirds are go, mission to Mars, with support from the UK Space Agency and International Rescue. Find out more at funkidslive.com/space.
It's time for this week's Science in the News. Now, snot palaces built by sea creatures could help NASA explore space. Have you ever heard a better headline than that? You see, creatures under the sea, called giant laravaceans, make mucus mansions by blowing up their snot like a balloon big enough for them to live in. They climb inside. Now, scientists have been analysing this process using underwater robots with lasers. The story gets even better, and they say that what they've learned could help NASA build places that humans can live on Mars. Also, the largest vessel in the UK to test spacecraft has been installed in Oxfordshire. It's 98 tonnes, it's 16 metres tall, 8 metres wide, and it will check how ready spacecrafts are for flight by putting them in a vacuum at wild temperatures to see how they'll do in space. And finally, staying in space, Europe's Solar Orbiter probe has made its first close pass of the Sun. It was launched in February, and it's on a mission to see what makes the Sun behave so differently. The orbiter went between Venus and Mercury, 77 million kilometres away from the Sun, which is the closest it's been yet. But in the next few years, it's going to get even closer and try and travel to just 43 million kilometres away from the Sun. And that is it for this week's Fun Kids Science Weekly. If you've got any science questions that you want answered on the show, you need to leave it as a review for us over on Apple Podcasts while you're there, it's one of the best places that you can find all of the amazing podcast series that we do. You've heard some today. We've got loads more for you to check out as well. Apple Podcasts for that, Google, Spotify, however you find your shows. It's on the free Fun Kids app and at funkidslive.com too. And remember, Fun Kids is a children's radio station from the UK. You can hear us all around the country on your DAB digital radio, on that free Fun Kids app and at funkidslive.com.